Armchair commanders, we call the shots. From our living room thrones where the action's hot. We're the generals of fiction, the masters of war. In silver screen battles with buttered popcorn. Armchair commanders, armchair commanders.
All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John.
And I'm Jack.
And this week we are fortunate enough to be teaming up with the Underrated Movie Podcast. Welcome. If you'd like to tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I am Derrick McDuff, as you mentioned, of the Underrated Movie Podcast, where it's like yourself, it's a movie podcast where this one I talk about underrated films or underappreciated ones or ones that have slipped under the radar, and I do that every other Monday.
And we're excited to have you. Jack was more excited about your movie choice.
Monkey Movie Monday.
Monkey Movie Monday. For the people at home, it isn't Monday, and this episode doesn't even come out on a Monday, but we got it in our heads that one day was a different day, and that it just spiraled from there. So even though today is Saturday, we're just calling it Monkey Movie Monday now.
Okay, Simeon Screening Saturday. How about that?
There it is.
I'm not sure that really rolls off the tongue as well.
It doesn't have as much pop, but you know.
But it is a little more. It's a little more classy.
Yeah, right.
You gotta bust out the dictionary for that one.
I know that. Yeah, do they say simian flu in this movie? Because I know they say it a bunch in Dawn. I think they say it at least once in here.
So, I have a confession to make, and that would be I saw the first one when it came out, the one with James Franco. I forget. I have the issue where I can't differentiate any of these movies because they only changed one word in the title. Like, I appreciate what
is yeah, it's a little rough.
I appreciate what they're doing with it,
Yeah.
but that being said, so I just refer to the one I have seen as the James Franco one.
Fair.
So I hadn't seen any other ones, so I ended up, because of this, I've skipped the second one. I've seen this one now, and are they on their fourth or fifth one now in theaters?
The fourth one now, yeah.
Okay.
In theaters, which is, it's still in the same series, but it's a different. It's like hundreds of years later, you know.
I suppose it would probably help our listeners if we mention what movie we're reviewing today. If you haven't ascertained by the context clues, it's going to be War of the Planet of the Apes, because it's the Planet of the Apes movie with the word war in it, and this is a war movie podcast. So
is it war? It's War for the Planet of the Apes, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
War for the Planet of the Apes, because I have the Wikipedia page pulled up on another tab. See, I'm really just batting 1,000 today on my mistakes. So, but what made you go with this as your choice for joining us?
So I am a really big fan of this franchise, specifically of not of the older ones, but of the franchise we're talking about, the modern, I guess, Planet of the Apes franchise, especially this trilogy. And I think the Franco one is okay. It's a pretty good. It's a good movie. But then when Matt Reeves takes over and directs the second, and then this one, the third one, I think they become some of my favorite modern blockbusters of all time. And I was like, well, this is a war movie podcast. And I know you guys kind of have a loose definition of what constitutes a war movie. And I'm like, you know what? This one's got war in the title. I love these movies. It's a good way to talk about this movie and talk about it in a context that I don't think it normally gets talked about on this war movie podcast. I thought that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, we definitely do have a loose interpretation here, and recently we've kind of gone off the rails a little bit. I feel like we're going to have to hit up a John Wayne movie or something to balance it out, where it's like, no, this is absolutely 100% a war movie. But I definitely think, War for the Planet of the Apes, I think this absolutely meets all the criteria of a war film, like to a T. It's just an unconventional opposing sides is our story.
Right, right. This isn't like Vietnam or something.
Like last week, we reviewed Disney's Atlantis. So
Oh, okay. That's that. I mean, I could see it. I could see
yeah,
it.
we chatted about it. It stretches
Hmm.
it stretches the imagination as far as a war movie goes, but we're like, you know what, close enough.
Yeah. Well, this one I feel like it's like if anybody tries to make the argument, you're like, it does hit all the beats like you said, and it's got war in the title, you know. So like that's why I think I picked it over Dawn, because Dawn is actually I think a better movie, and I'm kind of bummed you didn't get to see Dawn because like that is one of my favorite movies of all time, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And it's interesting. Like I wonder how this one plays without having the context of Dawn. There's a lot of war stuff in that, but this one is called War, so kind of got to do it. I feel like.
And being someone who skipped the second one, I I appreciated the fact that even though it is very apparent, this movie definitely references events that occurred in the second film. That being said, if you didn't watch the first or the second film, you can still watch this film and more or less get where you need to go without too much of a misunderstanding. Like you might miss a few things, but like overall, like this film could operate as a standalone film if need be.
Yeah, I think I agree with that for sure. I think the first one is like if you don't watch the first one, I think that one's definitely kind of skippable. And then yeah, the second one, yeah, they all do stand kind of alone. I think though they work better as an arc to get Caesar's kind of whole emotional journey. And are we going full spoilers or should we hold back on that?
This movie came out in 2014. There's no such thing as spoilers for a 10-year-old film.
All right. So from the first planet, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the Franco one, when you see Caesar being born, and this ends with him leading his people, or I guess apes, across the desert like Moses, and then dying at the end. Like his whole emotional arc is, I think, one of the best like arcs of a character in modern fiction as far as I'm concerned. And so like he has a really interesting arc in just this film, but when you have the wider to see where he's been in that middle and beginning chapter, I think that ending really hits so hard because I don't think this is a perfect movie like Dawn is, but I think it has a perfect ending for the trilogy.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated how they were able to wrap this up. I gotta say, there's nothing in this film that really there's nothing in this film that really irks me. Usually there's something, but this is one of those films that like I was able to watch it start to finish, and at no point did I like ever like pause the film and I'm like, what the fuck did I just see? Like, um, which happens a lot with some of the stuff we watch. Jack, what'd you think?
Great movie. I argued for a while that we should watch it in chronological order, but no.
I told you.
Two are war movies.
We got into a big debate because long time ago he made me watch Star Trek 6
Okay.
and I was like, don't I need to watch 1 through 5 for this to make sense? He's like, no, you don't. So when he's like, well, we got to watch the first two Planet of the Apes before we watch this one, I'm like,
other more than the fucking Star Trek movies. You know this.
how would I know? I'm applying your logic that we can do shit out of order here and it doesn't matter.
Pile.
Whatever.
See, I will say, like Star Trek's 2 through 5 are actually like, or 2 through 4, I guess, are kind of like a mini trilogy. But then 6 is kind of a standalone.
See?
Yeah, I will verify that. The Star Trek movies are weird like that.
Yeah, and the horse you rode in on, John.
I'm sorry, I'm a Star Wars guy, okay? I came from a place where things were out of order and it was totally fine.
Although I will also say, well, I definitely would say Dawn is a war movie. I don't think rises.
And that was the first one, right?
Yeah, that's the Franco one, not the
Yeah.
Kerry Russell one.
Yeah, I would agree that the first one probably isn't a true, like, that's one of the ones where you're going to have to stretch the imagination on it. But kind of speaking of that first one and going to the premise of Planet of the Apes in general, where, we have this event in human history where apes gain the same level of cognitive abilities as humans do. And in the process, there's also a virus that makes humans revert themselves into a more primal state. Um, One of the things that struck me with like that first movie when I watched it was there's a scene where like when Caesar is in his like cages with a bunch of other apes and they kind of get like abused and like taunted all the time. And then like once they
Draco Malfoy
yeah, by Draco Malfoy, of course.
and Brian Cox.
And I was like, and I'm like, I get it. Like, they have to set up these guys to be dickheads to them in order for them to want to rise up and have this mutiny and take over the world type thing. Like, for the purpose of the story, I get it. But I'm like, would that really happen in real life? And is that a realistic expectation? And we had scheduled this a couple of weeks ago, and it's like not that like shortly after we scheduled this to be on the books, me and my wife went to the zoo. Just things you do on a random Saturday because you want an activity to do. And we're walking around, and we make it over to the primate area, and there's this enclosure with a giant glass window, and they had set up like an extra barricade in front of this glass window, probably like an extra 5 or 10 feet. So like anybody who came up to this enclosure not only had the glass window, but was like separated by 10 feet from the glass window. And I saw this jackass hop the barricade, go right up to the glass window. And like as I see him doing this, I also notice like there's a posted sign on the barricade that's like, we have put this barricade up because we've noticed unwanted social behaviors from this group of animals. We're trying to figure it out, so that's why there's this space. Like you can still look at them, but like we're figuring things out, okay? People at the zoo are doing their zoo things. And he goes up to this window and he starts taunting, like, like waving and basically starts taunting this monkey. And this monkey, like, very obviously is a monkey family because it's a male and a female and like a little itty bitty monkey. And the male monkey just loses his shit, like starts bouncing off the glass. And I'm like, oh, this is how Planet of the Apes happens. It's because idiots like him.
Yep.
I'm like, you know what? Now I don't think it's that far-fetched of a concept.
The real world was just like actually, this is if apes, I should say, became super smart, they would totally rise up because of jerks like this. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm like, you're the first one they're going to snap in half if they have the ability to.
Oh yeah, that's great.
That was just an observation from the first film though, but kind of going into this film, we talked about how this very much fits the mold of a war movie, and I don't think like there's a lot of things that exemplify that in this film, but I think the opening sequence in this film is like bar none probably my favorite sequence in the entire film, because it reminds me every bit of like a Vietnam War movie, because you have like these guys walking through the woods and they're trying not to be detected, and then it breaks out into like this ambush kind of scene. And like honestly, I thought it was a very well done, like I thought it was an excellent start to this film.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that first scene it really kind of sets you up for your expectations up for what this movie is going to be. At least the first half of the movie is going to be, because the first half is kind of like a war road film almost, and the second half is like a prison break movie. And you can really tell like this movie has the DNA of war films in it. You know, like you mentioned, with just like the action, the battles that like there's that one at the beginning. Then of course there's the one at the end between the two human forces. Um, but like it really, it feels like you're watching this like, oh, they definitely like were like clearly calling out parallels between, you know, speaking of Vietnam, Apocalypse Now feels like there's even on there's that graffiti where you see it, somebody wrote Ape Apocalypse Now. There's also The Great Escape, like DNA in this
Great
completely
Escape,
escape. Yep, exactly. So
Ape Apocalypse.
so you can really see that they did their Matt Reeves and company did their homework when it came to making this a true war movie.
I also appreciate it. Like, there's so many smaller things that in the grand scheme, like we tend to be more of like a history focused thing. Like a lot of the movies we do are based in reality. You know, like World War II and the Civil War, Vietnam, all that kind of stuff really dominates this particular genre of film. Um, and it's easy because Hollywood only has to do half the work when they have a real story that they just have to tweak. Um, so the fact, like you said, you know, they did a lot of work on this. One of the things I noticed that I found interesting was, you know, and it goes to the like seeing the second movie helps with your perception of this one. But you have apes who have defected from the ape cause and have joined the humans to go against their own, you know, their own people essentially. Um, and that is a true aspect of almost any armed conflict in the history of ever, but it's not something you really think about. The double agent, for example, is not really something that's in the forefront of your mind, but it's something that it made me think about because it's a very upfront visual representation because it's like here's a group of 40 humans plus their two ape companions who are traitors to their own people. And I'm like, oh, this like there are certain aspects of this film that are because they're apes, it genuinely makes you think like, oh yeah, we as humans, we do this shitty stuff too. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I really love that whole arc that you know, I don't think their characters ever given a name. Like they're called donkeys, the red donkey has where you know, you see in that first scene after that incredible battle, you know, they've captured these humans including this one guy who uses bow and arrows. We find out later his name is Preacher, and he is kind of somebody who kind of pops up again and again throughout the movie, and you're kind of wondering like, oh, is this guy gonna like see like the error of his ways because Caesar like spared him in the beginning, like, you know, he sees that whole scene play out between the colonel, we haven't even talked about Woody Harrelson's so good in this, but he sees that whole play out, and then, you know, Caesar's got that big triumphant moment at the end with the grenade, and then he gets shot by Preacher. You're like, okay, no, there's no redemption here, but that sparks this redemption in the Red Donkey character, that ape, and he just blow, and it just is such a great moment because you're just like, fuck you, man. Caesar saved you, and now you betrayed him. Like you shot him with the arrow, and he just explodes him with a grenade launcher. You're like, good for you, and that gives Caesar the chance to explode the gasoline tank or whatever. So, seeing him, you know, and that because Caesar and him have that exchange of like, who's gonna save you? Who, like, you know, who is there even anything left to save? And I loved that was like his ending there. You know, that whole arc was really well realized throughout the whole course of the movie, I thought.
I I did like I appreciated that it went with the like screw you route as opposed to the like error of his ways route.
Yeah.
But I found his death to be a bit comical. Like in the same way that I found like when Caesar finally dies, like that's a very powerful moment.
Mhm.
But the actual wounding event that leads to his death is comical because you have this very like slow mo like running like he's got a belt full of grenades like Rambo type deal, and he like grabs one grenade and he pulls the pin and he goes to toss it, and then it's not immediately clear, because of like how far out the shot of that particular frame is. But it just looks like he slips on a patch of ice and he like fumbles all of his grenades. And you're like, oh, nice hands, feet. Like, which is hilarious because monkeys have hands for feet.
Which is also why they're able to survive that avalanche that the grenade causes while all the humans get wiped out. They all get to run up to the trees, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah. But it's not until they like zoom in and you're like, and he like breaks the arrow out of his ribcage. You're like, oh, somebody foiled his attempt. He wasn't just an idiot. Like, but that was my first instinct. I was like, you're going to go through all the effort of making this super dramatic scene just for him to trip on some fucking ice. Like, but in the same way, I'm totally cool with the preacher character dying. It's just a very like, I don't know, it's like a cartoonish lightning bolt from God kind of thing where he gets just demolished by a grenade.
See, for me, I get that, but for me, I was more just like fist pump because it kind of like comes so quick and unexpected. He just blows. There's not like a big dramatic thing. It's just like, and he's done. He's toasted. Like he's gone off the face of the earth. And I'm just like, good, yeah, done. All right, see you later, guy.
I think, kind of to tie it back in, the preacher character really does lend to, our first introduction to him is, he's one of the few survivors of the initial attack. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I appreciate about this film is that as a war film, it's not just, pew pew explosions, action. Like that's all fun and stuff. Like I greatly enjoy this stuff. But, Preacher is one of the first instances where we get kind of a philosophical discussion around the main central issue of this particular conflict, which is different than any other conflict we deal with. Or not really, depending on how you want to compare and contrast it to certain wars. But, Caesar says, they're like, do you think they're going to pass on the message you gave? And he's like, no, them being alive is the message. Like we're showing them that we're not, beasts or savages or whatever. Which ultimately didn't matter in the end. But I appreciate a war film that not only is like pew pew, but is also exploring the moral sides of whatever conflict they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one strength of this movie. And I think a lot of people were a little hard on this movie when it came out because they're expecting, like a goofy, just kind of more fun pew pew movie. And this movie is like, it has levity, it has like Bad Ape and stuff like that, which you need because this movie is very heavy. Like it starts with like Caesar's family getting murdered, and like Woody Harrelson is just like despicable. And it's interesting because over the course of these movies, the humans have kind of had less and less humanity, and Caesar is basically struggling with like his own humanity, his like need for vengeance, and him seeing the worst in himself, which kind of manifests as the villain of the movie Koba, when he kind of like has those hallucinations or whatever, or dreams or whatever you want to call it, of Koba, and he's like, yeah, I am just kind of the worst in me that existed with him is here. I can't let this go. And I love that all culminates in that final scene when he sees the Colonel, and the Colonel has in what the Colonel would think thinks he's lost his humanity because he's no longer able to speak. But we've seen through the course of the movie that that's not really accurate because of the character of Nova. Nova is this character who is the human. He's the only kind of good, quote unquote, good human in the movie who, has the same thing happen to her. She's the one who causes it to happen to the Colonel and presumably everyone else, where she loses her, ability to speak, but she still has what makes her human, her compassion. That scene where she puts the cherry blossom flower in the like the hair of the gorilla, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. But that is such a powerful scene, and to have that at the end where Caesar is staring down, this guy has been trying to get revenge on the whole movie, and he just sees like, oh, this guy, killing him will bring nothing, because not because it's, revenge is pointless or it's the Ouroboros cycle eating itself or whatever, but because it's like he is already at his lowest that he can possibly be. And when the colonel, like, he's just like, all right, I'm out. Like, this guy, he's done. Like, there's nothing here for me. And it's like you said, it's just like such a the moment when he shoots the gun and kills himself, in which you don't see, you just like kind of see to the side. And it's not like a bang. It's like this little pathetic little pop. And I'm like, that's so perfect for the way you're gonna end that character.
I loved Woody Harrelson's performance in this, and I feel conflicted about it because I don't know. Have you heard about the problematic stuff involving him?
Oh man, Woody Harrelson too. That's a bummer. Okay, I have not.
What'd he do?
I some it depends on who you ask, but it's related to like Me Too and stuff. It's like nobody's ever. I don't think anybody's ever been under the impression that Hollywood is a good place, but it sucks because like he is genuinely a terrific performer, and I love his work. I It just sucks that like whenever you see something like that, like you see their performance, you have that like in the back of your mind, like, oh, he's problematic for this reason. It like, and granted, like Kevin Spacey, like way like was near the top of like bad people in that regards, but the same way as like Kevin Spacey, phenomenal actor, and like some terrific movies that's like now whenever I watch one of those movies, I have to deal with that thought process as I'm also trying to enjoy a film,
Right.
which is unfortunate, but like that to the side, I thought his performance in this film was absolutely stellar. I think I think he plays a deranged man very well.
Yeah, he's so good, and that scene when that comes at about the midpoint, when it's just him and Caesar speaking to each other, I thought was such a powerful scene. And someone who I am, as far as I'm aware, is not problematic at all. Andy Serkis he is so good in that scene, and I know that there was a big groundswell of people who are like, you know what, he needs to get a nomination for this movie, and just like he was with Lord of the Rings, just like he was with the last one, but because the Academy is not going to give a Oscar ever to, at least in the foreseeable future, to somebody who is doing a mocap performance, that didn't happen. But I really did think that Serkis deserved an Oscar, if not at least a nomination, for his performance in this film. And that scene between, it was just two titans going at it, like, just so I really like, it happens right there in the middle. It kind of like the whole movie balances on that one interaction.
I think there really should be a new Oscar category for best scene to inspire a meme. Um, which I don't know like how up to date you stay with meme culture, but
Talking about the bad ape scene.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no! Steve Zahn deserves a fucking Oscar for that.
Yeah.
Oh no!
It's funny because like I know this movie really well, and then when that meme like just out of nowhere, like 10 years later, started happening, I was like, oh yeah, that's great. And then I was rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense that meme would catch on, even way after the fact. But yeah, shout out to Steve Zahn in this, because like I said, you really need his character in this. You need Bad Ape, because there is so much of the movie that is just so like deadly serious, that having this kind of like goofier character who also doesn't exist just to be comic relief, like he moves the plot along. He's also there to kind of like clue in the audience that this is something that's not just happening here with these apes, it's something that is going all around the world. His performance is just so good, him, and then I think also Maurice, those are like the heart of this movie. Like both of those characters, Maurice is just the goat as far as I'm concerned. Like I love him in all of these movies. The orangutan. So he he has so many incredible moments. I love the two of them, and then like Nova, just when they're kind of going on their adventures, when they're tunneling through and everything, and yeah, that scene that became a meme. Like that's a hilarious scene where it's just like you got to go up or whatever, and the very soft spoken Maurice just like growls at him. Um, it really works.
I find it interesting because Maurice is probably the best example of this, where he seems to be animated to a much higher degree. Like the actual CGI animation seems to be like they put way more effort into him than a lot of other characters in this movie. Like,
Yeah,
and
he
I
looks
don't know if it's
great.
because he's such a central part to being Caesar's like right hand man, if you will, but like it's for me, it was like noticeably different how much more realistic he was compared to some of the other apes.
Yeah, there's something about it that I like. I don't know if it's because of that or it's just like maybe orangutans are somehow easier to animate. But it looks so good, and there's also like little things that are really great. Like he has that like scar on the side of his face, which I was like watching. And I was like, wait a minute. And I was thinking back. That is from the end of he gets hit with like grazed by a bullet at the end of Dawn. So just like the attention to detail that they put into the way he looks is really incredible. And I would say also Caesar too. Like Caesar looks so good.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of my few beefs with this film is the fact that like with the exception of our like primary three or four of like Bad Ape and Caesar and whatnot, I can't tell the difference between them. Not to be speciesist, but or anything, but it's just obvious that the animators were like, okay, these are our main characters. And they have to. They're the main characters. But also, it's like I know who the main characters are because everything else is kind of subpar compared to them.
Yeah, and well, I think they do a good job of like kind of giving you hints at who's who. Like, Caesar has like a birthmark kind of like on his below his shoulder. So like I mean, Caesar you can tell he's Caesar, but like that is kind of a clear indication. Or like Caesar's son has that like scar from the bear that he gets at the beginning of Dawn, so you know that's him. Of course, he doesn't last very long in this movie. But yeah, I think maybe it's because I've seen these movies so many times that I like can clearly be like, well, that's Rocket, that's Maurice or Marcel or Maurice, whatever. Like, or well, it was in or anything, but still, like I can kind of like clue in easier. Um, and I wonder too if it's because it's so dark that it's a little bit hard to tell. I want whereas like Rise, there's a lot more daylight and stuff like that. But I do really like the darkness, the aesthetics, like in the snow. I think there's some. It's so weird. I've like this war movie with like apes in the snow. Nothing looks like this.
Yeah, I did find the like it was very jarring between the two settings of like the ape's original home versus like like you said, the first part is very war esque, and then the second part you related it to like a jailbreak. But in my mind, I was like, have you ever seen the film Hearts War?
I have not.
So that has Colin Farrell and Bruce Willis in it, and it's a World War II POW slash legal drama. But that entire movie takes place during the Battle of the Bulge, so it's very snowy.
Hmm.
But I was like, the second half of this movie, I was like, this reminds me of Hearts War a lot.
Okay, interesting. I'll have to check it out.
But I think it was almost good for that fact because not that there's two distinct movies within this one film, but not only are you getting a dramatic shift in the storyline, but the visuals you get with it help you make that transition, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like because I do think it is kind of two halves of a movie: the road movie, and then like the Great Escape movie. And yeah, having it be in that very distinct setting, in the second half, kind of puts you in that mindset, and also it's so cold and unforgiving, and it you really are in the Colonel's world, right? You're not like in the beginning. Caesar is defending, right? It's Caesar's world. Like he's still in danger, but he's got control of the situation a little bit more. He has absolutely no control in that second half. He's just in this cold, barren, unforgiving place with an absolute psychopath.
And, you know, that kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, Woody Harrelson just does that so well. And he has some great monologues he gives here. Like, when Caesar is first captured and you see him, like, slowly coming out of consciousness, you just hear Woody Harrelson reciting pairs of opposing generals where he's like, Grant, Lee, Wellington, Napoleon. And I was like, God damn, that is such a fucking, like, that is an amazing intro to this guy. Like you, with him saying like 8 words, you have automatically now established that A, he is a military leader, and B, he thinks of himself as like he sees himself as the last bastion of humanity, but he also sees himself as one of these great leaders of history, and like he fully expects to have his name alongside them.
Yeah, and I think
it's done in so few words.
Yeah, it's so economical and so smart, and it also tells you exactly what he thinks of Caesar. You know, if he thinks he's Grant, he thinks, or like he's Lee or whatever, he thinks Caesar's Grant. He thinks like this is like my enemy, that I have to destroy. You know, like this. You know, it's like Rommel being like, the Desert Fox. I read your book, you magnificent bastard, or whatever.
What'd you think, Joe?
Oh, is he still in the bathroom?
Oh, I didn't hear him go to the bathroom.
I just saw, the chat there on the side. I just noticed.
Oh, that's because I don't pay attention to the chat. Anyways, but then, you know, there's a couple different conversations that he has with Caesar, and another one's like I love the fact that, like, here's a man who, like, part of his backstory is that he killed his own son.
Yeah.
Because he was infected with this virus. And he has the sack to tell Caesar, you're so emotional. Like, take it down a notch. Right. It's like, easy. You're the one committing war crimes here.
And yeah, they're both kind of driven by this motivation of their sons being dead, and ironically, the colonel killed both of their son. Caesar is angry because, you know, and he kills, you know, both of these sons, you know, I guess because he thinks it's what he has to do to save humanity. So he kills Caesar's son because he's trying to kill Caesar's trying to destroy these apes, but he's kills his own son because he views that as like a danger to humanity, which is like, it's so messed up, but it really tells you the conviction that this character has, which he sees through right till the end, where he shoots himself, because, you know, he's not a hypocrite at all. He is a monster and he is despicable, but he has his horrific convictions.
He's a consistent monster, is what
yes.
he is.
Yeah, exactly.
The other, I don't know, it's just, there's so many great, this film really doesn't waste what it has. And it's kind of a shame, because I remember, when I say I've never seen this film, I've never seen it start to finish. I remember maybe like 5-6 years ago being at a relative's house for Thanksgiving, and this was, you know, great Thanksgiving Day movie. But it was just on in the background, and I just remember Woody Harrelson shooting apes, so I just tuned out because I'm like, whatever, turkey. It's kind of a shame, because I think myself, and I think a lot of people probably have that mindset where it's like, you know, we live in an age where it's like, if we don't have our attentions caught in like the first 30 seconds, like we're not going to sit down for it. And I kind of noticed the same thing today, because I went to the movies earlier today for another film that Woody Harrelson is in, Fly Me to the Moon.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, so when I saw the ad for it, I'm like, I'm expecting it to kind of just be like a meh comedy, like, you know. But I get there and I was just absolutely floored at how good that film actually was. And I'm like, the the preview for this film did it zero justice. Like, I don't know what it was, but like, had they sold me differently on that film, I would have been like 100% on board with seeing it. I saw it today because it was a film my wife wanted to see. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I left the theater. I'm like, oh my god, that was really good. Like, and I think a lot of films are like that today, where it's like there this is a genuinely good film, but I think there's definitely a lot of people that are like, oh, it's Monkey Movie Monday number 3, you know,
Yeah.
Monkey Movie Monday.
Monkey Movie Monday.
But
Um,
I think you're really right, and it's something that I talk about all the time on Underrated. Is a big reason a lot of these movies become underrated is because they just get mismarketed. I just talked about it when I did the episode on Crimson Peak. That movie, they made it look like a horror movie. It's a gothic romance, And this movie, they tried to make it like, you know, seem like this is just a kind of big fun adventure movie. And even me, having seen the first two, kind of a little bit more knowing what to expect, I still didn't expect it to be this kind of like POW like drama thing. I was expecting me more like Dawn or Rise. So yeah, like definitely a movie where they're like, and I get it, I get like it's a big summer blockbuster, or whatever, and you're trying to make it seem like a big fun movie, but I think Matt Reeves just makes these big blockbusters and makes them like thinking man's ones. That's why I was so hyped when the Batman came out, and it did not disappoint because I was like, this guy makes like really good big budget movies that are more than just like punch whatever. You actually like have to think about what are the deeper themes and cores of these movies, and that doesn't always sell in trailers. It's not always something that's easy to get across in a trailer like this in just 2 minutes or whatever.
I think maybe something else is maybe just personal marketing, because like Reeves is not a director I'm very well acquainted with. Like I've seen a bunch of his films, but when we talk about directors, it's always like, oh, Stanley Kubrick or Christopher Nolan or Zack Snyder. Even if they aren't the best of directors, they have that name recognition. And I think that's where the ops, the issue of like personal name branding is an issue, because you know if you don't get people with Monkey Movie Monday, you got to draw them in
Monkey Movie
another
Monday.
way. Yeah, you got to draw them in another way. And like, take Christopher Nolan. Every couple of years, he comes out with it's always like a summer blockbuster. It's never really released in the normal, like, air quotes, Oscar time frame
Right.
for movies to come out. It's always like a summer thing. You look at Dunkirk, uh, Oppenheimer, what have you. But pretty much all of his summer blockbusters always get nominated and pretty frequently win awards. And that's because people associate his name with quality. So even though it could be a summer blockbuster action shoot 'em up type film, but because it has his name attached to it, people will go watch it, and will go and watch it with a critical lens in mind versus Monkey Movie Monday.
Yeah, and
Monkey Movie Monday.
it's interesting to compare Reeves with Nolan, right? Because they both made Batman movies. So you can like really draw that parallel. And I think Nolan is maybe him and Tarantino, maybe one or two other guys. There's not very many people where, like there was in the '90s and early aughts, where the director is the draw. I think like the studios are like the movies that studios pump out and really promote really heavily rely a lot more on like, hey, this is a franchise, this is a Batman movie, this is a Planet of the Apes movie. People know these movies. This is a sequel or a remake to something that or it's based on a toy, Barbie or whatever. Like, which like those movies are good often. Like this we're talking about one right now. But yeah, it is a little bit harder, I think, unless you were like one of these two or three guys, to get the movie made, an original movie made with this like director recognition. But I do appreciate that Matt Reeves is somebody who writes his movies as well, and I love because I think writers do not get as much recognition as they deserve, and a lot of my favorite directors are directors that are also writer directors.
Yeah, it's filmmaking's definitely become kind of a divested art form.
I mean, going back, I think even going back in the day, like one of my favorite directors, Billy Wilder, he was actually one of my favorite writers. The reason he started directing is because he was like, people are like, my movies are not getting done justice. So and people don't know me. Like, so to get the movies made the way I want to make them, I'm going to have to start directing these movies too. And he was a great director too, but I think he was a better writer.
It kind of makes me think of like, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the TV series MASH.
Yeah.
You know, that series ran so long that it got to a point that like, they didn't have one consistent director or writer or producers or whatnot. And if you watch that TV show, there are literally some episodes with credit scenes where it's like starring Alan Alda, directed by Alan Alda, written by Alan Alda, produced by Alan Alda, and it's like, God, fuck, like,
Yeah. Well, that's how John.
we don't really
Krasinski
see
got
that anymore.
Well, that's how John Krasinski got his start in directing. Is he? I think started directing stuff on The Office.
Now look at him. He's got the Quiet Place money.
Right. He's got his Quiet Place. He's got his If money.
Jack, what was what's the moment in this movie that hit you the most?
When I first saw a monkey.
That's
I don't know, the scene with Woody Harrelson and his death scene. And you're right, his establishing shot where he talks about generals, good shit.
Good shit.
Especially the part when he shaved his head.
Yeah, that's such a powerful shot when you just kind of like, because you see the cult-like devotion that these, like, you're like, this is not like regular soldiers. These guys are like a cult. Like, the regular soldiers are going to come and kill them because they're so insane and devoted to this like one guy, yeah. Which by the way, I just want to point out that their Easter eggs in this movie are like insane. I didn't realize until recently that because they're the Alpha and Omega. In like the second Planet of the Apes movie, there's a bomb that blows up the entire world. That's called the Alpha Omega bomb. There's a million things like that.
There was one, I don't know if it was necessarily an Easter egg, but I forget what part it was, but there was a scene, I think it was during like their traveling sequence where it wasn't like the original music from the original Planet of the Apes movie, but it was very reminiscent or inspired by it. Like it was like a direct nod
Right, it's got
to
like
it.
The kind of same
Yeah.
drums and stuff. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So those were the kind of moments where I was like, there's stuff snuck into here. I just don't know what I'm looking for.
Right, it's so subtle. And I'm glad you brought up the music because that was something I had in my notes too. Is the Michael Giacchino score in this is phenomenal, and like you said, he utilizes a lot of like, not like the exact themes or anything, but the sounds of like, it sounds like a old the 60s and 70s Apes movies while also still feeling very modern and very much in Giacchino style because he is absolutely my favorite composer. And his score in this like is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It's the same as like, that first scene in Up, which he of course also scored. A big part of the reason that movie or that scene works so well, you're seeing this very emotional thing, and it has the absolute perfect score to go along with it. It's going to make you cry in that first scene and Up. In the same way, the last scene in this, it's got that emotional beat, and it just hits you with this theme. This it's incredibly powerful theme. And, for me, that's my moment. Like, this movie has a lot of great moments in it. And I've talked about them on a bunch of stuff. I actually recently, because I freelanced for Watch Mojo, I wrote like a list of like the Apes franchise best moments. There was a bunch of moments from this movie in there, and one of the top ones was that last scene where Caesar is dying, and you've got that great score swelling, and you see everyone like playing off in the background, and they've finally reached this oasis, and he has his final words with Maurice. Like, it's really touching. Like, everything, like the writing, the directing, the music, the performances, it all comes together. The effects, they all come together in that moment to give it, like I said, a perfect ending. It's not a perfect film, but that ending for me is perfect.
See, I didn't realize you had worked for Watch Mojo. Now I know who to blame for all the time I dick around at work.
Yeah,
The
so
real
you see, if you there, I'm definitely responsible for some of that.
Dude, I sank so much time into Watch Mojo videos, and I have you to blame for it.
See, I did too, and that's why I was like, maybe I should just start writing for these guys. I've watched enough videos.
Did you just put in an application or?
Like 10 years ago, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
We the real question here is: are you a Rotten Tomatoes critic?
Uh, not currently. I do have some reviews that
No?
are counted on Rotten Tomatoes when I was writing at Film Thread.
Lucky. That's what we're gunning for.
Nice, yeah. Well, I'm not.
I was about to say, you.
I don't.
Some people are just fucking wrong on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, like, well, that's the thing people don't get. It's an aggregate, right? And so it's like, yeah, it's just the thing where it's like there's a lot of opinions here, and if you just take a big swath of people, a lot of times people are wrong. Like that's a big premise for Underrated, is that the first movie ever covered, Speed Racer, that movie has a 7%, which means that 63% of people were just flat out wrong.
Another great monkey movie.
yes, Monkey
Monkey
Movie
Movie.
Monday.
Monkey Movie Monday. See, we keep joking around here. I don't know what the standards for being a Rotten Tomatoes person was at the time you did it, but to be a Rotten Tomatoes critic, you have to do 2 years of consistent rating to be considered.
Yeah.
And we've been doing our podcast for about a year now, so we keep joking. We're like, yeah, we're halfway there to screwing up Rotten Tomatoes. Like,
yeah, you have to hit like certain numbers. Like, to be clear, I am not certified on my own. It was only because I was working for a much larger publication that was certified for. So it's like if you click on my name on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like Derrick's reviews are counted when he writes for the following sites: Film Thread.
seems like a cop out. Jack, did you have any closing thoughts on this film?
What's everyone drinking?
I just had an Arizona cherry lime thing.
It looked like you were drinking it out of like a giant like Huggies glass,
So
like like the Huggies barrel of
Oh
juice.
yeah. It's a tiki mug that I got from Bubba Gum Shrimp Co. Yeah, because I bought like the special drink or whatever, and you got to take home the tiki mug after you bought the drink. So it was right across the street from Disneyland at Bubba Gum.
Jack, what do you have?
Well, I just finished a grape Fago, and now I'm having a grape Gatorade.
Grape on grape.
I like grape.
Well, it's appropriate. Grape almost sounds like ape, so like that makes sense.
Monkey Movie on. Anyway, yeah, I quit drinking for most of July, so now I'm ingesting inordinate amounts of sugar.
Gotta make up for it somehow.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't smoke weed anymore, nor do I drink, so now I just eat more sugar because I can't go without sin.
You gotta find something to replace it. Like that's one thing people talk about, like when they quit smoking or drinking or whatever. You gotta find some way to, that void can't stay empty.
Thank God I
Well-
didn't. Thank God I didn't make it religion, huh, guys?
Right?
You'd really have a problem with Monkey Movie Monday. So we had a guest on a couple weeks ago. His name is John, and his brand is called the Tattooed Historian. And he's a sober individual. He gave up drinking like a decade or so ago. But that was one of the things he was talking about with us when we were reviewing the movie Napoleon with him. Not Napoleon, Waterloo. I thought Napoleon because it's, but anyways, the old Waterloo movie we were reviewing with him. And he's like, yeah, ever since I stopped drinking, I can just eat like unlimited amounts of cake and it doesn't affect me because like the sugar more or less offsets the amount of calories I was ingesting when I was drinking. So we're like, that seems like a pretty fair trade-off. Like if you had the option between like drinking a 6-pack every night or having like half of a chocolate cake every night, like
It's like that joke on Parks and Rec when one season like Andy comes back and he's like jacked because he'd gotten cast in Guardians of the Galaxy, and because he was kind of like schlubby before that, and they were like, somebody was like, what happened to you? And he's like, what's your workout? And he's like, I just stopped drinking beer. It's like, how much beer were you drinking? A lot.
You gotta love great little like that's one of those like, why is it this way? Fuck you, that's why.
Yeah.
So I'm not going sober this evening. I had some leftover beverages for my 4th of July get together, so I'm having Smirnoff, red, white, and berry.
Oh, nice. I thought you were like drinking like a Jones soda or something like that. I think you're doing it right.
Mm-mm.
I should have put a little something in this. I should have put a little vodka in it or something. But
There's always next time.
yeah.
Um, so right about this time, we usually like to rate our movies. We don't like doing stars around here because we think that's a little overdone. We usually try and pick something relevant or specific to the movie that kind of simplifies. That's not a word. Symbolizes, or I don't know why my brain is blanking at this point. Something that represents the movie. I'm open to suggestions, but I personally think that Nova's doll would be a good rating metric because it is almost a character in and of itself because it goes pretty much, it's everywhere in this movie. It goes everywhere that Caesar does, essentially. It's also a supposed carrier of the virus that takes out the Colonel. So unless anybody has a better Monkey Movie Monday rating system, I think Nova's doll would be a good one.
I got nothing better.
So Jack, 1 to 5 Nova dolls.
5 Nova dolls. Monkeys. That's all you're fucking getting out of me.
I'm seeing a consistent theme in your criticism, or not.
I like monkeys.
For someone who is so excited to see this movie, like to discuss this movie, like the most prevalent thing you've had to say is Monkey Movie Monday.
What else do you need?
Okay.
All right, fine, fuck. You mentioned earlier that it gave you Vietnam vibes, which, okay, fine. Also, as a side note, have you guys heard of the whole Vietnamese rock ape thing?
No.
So there's this cryptid that was supposedly encountered by U.S. soldiers in Vietnam, and it's exactly what it says on the tin, of big fucking monkey that would throw rocks at soldiers.
Okay.
That's it.
See, I thought it was a monkey that was like, it was like the Thing. It was made of rocks. Like, I was like, that's a cool cryptid I'd never heard of.
I don't know. There was some weird shit in that war, but
we gotta get Kyle on the phone, discuss that a bit.
But also, I was getting Holocaust vibes from this. And anyone else?
Ooh.
Like,
yeah.
Like, I didn't immediately think. I didn't think Holocaust, but now that you mention it, it does give some pretty strong like Auschwitz vibes because they are purposely they're purposely starving them out. So there is that aspect of it.
Forced fucking labor.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother dimension to that I didn't even think about. That's actually really good.
That's all I could think about in the theater. Like, Jesus Christ, this is a Holocaust to these poor monkeys.
Yeah, and especially since, the Colonel's whole thing is like, he wants to exterminate this entire race. I think you're dead on there.
Yeah, and that part when he started monologuing in German to his soldiers.
Yes. That or the, they start playing the national anthem. And I was expecting, I'm like, oh, are they going to, start singing it? Or are they going to just, salute the flag while it plays? It's like, no, national anthem starts, start beating the shit out of these monkeys.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right.
What the fuck's a kilometer?
All right. Derrick, 1 to 5 Nova dolls.
It's 5 Nova dolls for me, too. I think... Like I said, there's points in this movie where I'm watching it, I'm like, it gets a little shaggy at times. Some of the plot stuff is a little bit like, okay, you gotta put this person here, you gotta put this ape here, you gotta do this thing. It doesn't always hang completely together. But the fact that it pulls off that good, it's never bad, but it's a little shaggy. The fact that it pulls off that ending, I can't the ending is so perfect, not just for this movie, which it is, but also for this entire trilogy, this story that we've gone on, for years. And it also leaves, it's like it wraps everything up so nicely, and it's like leaves you like knowing like, okay, like the future is going to be in these hands or whatever. It's a perfect ending, so that makes my rating have to be perfect, honestly.
And I can respect that. It's not fair for me to try and compare. When I give out a 5 rating, I want it to, it essentially has to be a perfect film. Films that we've given like 5, I've given 5 ratings to: Saving Private Ryan, Peak of Dawn, which I don't know if you've ever heard of that film, but I'll send it to you afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think this is an excellent film. I don't know if it's up to that par of like a Saving Private Ryan.
Sounds like we got ourselves a hater.
I think it's an excellent film. I think there's a lot to get out of this. And I think there's a lot to critically think about and to enjoy with this film. The only thing I am knocking it down on is inconsistent animation. Like I mentioned before, obviously our main characters are animated better than the average ape, which is to be expected. But to me, it was jarring at times, even between take like Bad Ape and Caesar, or Bad Ape and who is the orangutan's name again? I forgot.
Maurice.
Maurice. Even amongst our main characters, there seem to be varying levels of animation effort put in. So for that, I would give this 4 full dolls, and then the 5th doll is just missing like an arm, so like a 4.75. So that's the only thing I'm docking it on, is inconsistent animation.
That's not bad. That's not bad. And I'll just add one thing too. For me, I think that, and this might sound hyperbolic, but I totally mean it. I think this is probably my second favorite film trilogy ever. I think the first one is like a 4.5 for me, and the next 2 are both 5s. And I think that it just works so well. It hangs all together that I just love these. Monkey Movie Monday, like it's so good.
I better hear that on one of your episodes in the future.
I'm just gonna sneak it in. Like,
because you actually release your episodes on Mondays.
Yes, exactly. Next time there's a monkey in one of my movies, I'm gonna have to put that in. Check out what I got on the docket.
Jack, was Rotten Tomatoes give this?
And I actually have it pulled up this time. So, the
Ooh, good job.
You know, right? I finally do my fucking 94% on the tomometer and 84% on the audience rating.
Huh. That is much higher than I was expecting the critics to give it.
Aha, you're wrong, John.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I can't say I go with the critics on this. I don't think they're that far off.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a solid movie.
It is a underrated film. Haha!
Yes,
See what I did there?
There we go. Brought it back around.
Yeah. Speaking of which, if you got any social media accounts or any projects coming up or anything you want the people to know about, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so follow Underrated Movie Podcast on all the socials. Obviously, would love anybody out there to listen to Underrated. So just however you're listening to this, just look up Underrated Movie Podcast and it should come up. Or look up my name, Derrick McDuff. Likely would come up as well. But yeah, all the socials, Underrated Movie Podcast. I'm not sure when this is dropping, but I've got my next episode. So when is this dropping real fast?
This upcoming Friday.
Okay. All right. So I was going to mention my panel at Comic-Con, but it just happened yesterday. So if anybody was there, I love seeing you guys there. But other than that, yeah, then I'll have an episode coming out on Monday on The Phantom with somebody who was on my panel, my buddy JPG, talking about one of my favorite underrated movies from the night.
CJ, this is how we know we haven't made it yet, is because we're not going to Comic-Con.
Yeah, gotta rub it in.
You guys will get there. I'm sure it's coming around the bend soon enough.
You know, I appreciate.
You guys have been doing this for 1 year, so I've been doing it for 5. So, like, I just finally it took a time for me to get there.
That's fine. For both of us, this is more of a hobby than anything. We joke a lot around here. We're like, Smirnoff's not our sponsor, but they could be. So if anybody at Smirnoff is listening, we'll sell our souls to you. But I find myself very fortunate and you've probably experienced this also in doing your show, is that at a certain point you get just enough recognition that people you previously would have never thought you'd be having conversations with, like, you just have in your contacts on your phone.
Yes,
like
I've absolutely been in that exact situation.
It's like as a kid watching Band of Brothers, I didn't expect to have like 3 actors from that series to be in my contacts list, but here I am. Like, so despite it being a hobby and like we don't have a sponsor or anything like that, like we are popular enough that people aren't like, who the fuck are you? So I'll take that.
Yeah. I get that 100%.
With that being said, if you want additional content from us, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord under Armchair Commanders. If you enjoyed this episode, go check out Underrated Movie Podcast and leave us a review. The stars do matter. Until next time, I've been John.
And I've been Jack.
Derrick, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you all later.
Monkey Movie Monday.